Hello everyone, my name is Trevorius, and I have for you the last video in the What in the World Should I Be Doing series. Today I'll be talking about DPS. DPS is that role that everyone wants to play, and for a good reason. If you watch pro Overwatch, it's always the DPS players popping up in the kill feed and making flashy plays. And that is the role of the DPS, to be constantly popping up in the kill feed, which is why I think the name DPS is kind of misleading. Of course you do want to be dealing damage per second, but that's not the most important factor. You also have to be able to convert that damage into kills. And I think this is where people get tripped up when they play DPS. Anyone can pump a lot of damage into the enemy team, whether it be onto players, shields, tanks, or squishies, but if you can't convert that damage into kills, it is no one's fault but your own. You can't depend on your teammates to finish the kills, not because they're bad, but because that's not their job. As I've covered in the previous videos in this series, a tank's job is to create space and a support's job is to make their team better. Notice that there's nothing about killing the enemy team in there. For this reason, you have to be operating under the assumption that you must secure 3 to 4 kills per fight in order to win. If you adopt this mentality, you'll play properly as a DPS, because in order to secure those kills, you have to do 2 things. The first is stay safe enough so you don't die. If you're dead, you can't contribute to kills, and your team loses out on possibly their only source of consistent damage. But you also have to position aggressively enough to get the kills. If you're just sitting passively dealing damage without a purpose, your team is going to lose the fight. Your goal as a DPS is to find the balance between those 2 requirements. I've seen players who may stay alive all game, but they never contribute and then blame their team for not securing the kills. And I've seen players who dive way too deep. Maybe they get 1 pick, but then they lose the fight because their team will go the entire fight without a DPS. What I'm trying to say is that your positioning is very important, even more important than your aim. The best DPSs in the world will have great aim, but without their great positioning, they would be terrible. When I smurf, I will occasionally see DPS players who have amazing aim and mechanics, but they just cannot seem to position correctly to make use of those mechanics. And it's kind of sad because they could be really good, but may not even realize what the cause of their problem is. So I kind of want to switch gears and talk about the different classes of DPS, and how your playstyle should change with each class. I'm lumping together defense and offense heroes because they're all considered DPSs by the competitive community, even if Blizzard doesn't classify them as such. But the criteria that I use to reclassify them are my own, based on my observations of the playstyles. Obviously, if 2 heroes are in the same group, it doesn't mean they can be played exactly the same, but I consider their general game plan to be similar. Alright, so with that in mind, let's start with traditional DPSs. These heroes are McCree, Soldier, Pharah, Reaper, Bastion, and Junkrat. Traditional DPSs are very straightforward. You secure kills through throwing as much consistent damage at the enemy as possible. As you DPS, the enemy will eventually fall to you. So in order to make this happen, you want to position in the middle of your team, behind your tanks but in front of the supports. You can occasionally push up or fall back depending on the aggression of your team and the enemy, but in general you want to stay right in the middle. These are the most aim-dependent heroes. You have to have consistently good aim or you won't be able to do your job. It's also important to remember that even though you have strong DPS, you have to be able to focus targets when fights break out. Don't be constantly switching targets unless an enemy is low. Usually you'll want to focus the front line first and then work your way into the back line. Second, we have Assassins. These heroes are Genji, Tracer, Widow, and Hanzo. Assassins are good at quickly bursting a single hero and moving on to their next target. Assassins will usually not position as close to their team, but should rarely completely separate themselves from line of sight. Assassins are not supposed to recklessly dive into the enemy or position far away and attempt to distract the enemy. Both of those approaches will hurt your team more than help. Instead, stay near your team or on the outskirts of a fight until an opportunity presents itself, then kill your target. After this, continue to find new targets. Getting 1 pick isn't enough to win the fight. But don't get overzealous. Recognize when to go aggressive and when patience is needed. In contrast to the traditional DPS, Assassins will usually focus the backline first. Since they have strong burst, it makes more sense for them to focus squishies. So if you're an assassin, position in a way that you can take out the backline. There is a time and a place to focus the frontline, especially if it means securing a kill, but mostly it is a waste of your burst. And lastly, we have Specialists. These heroes are Sombra, Mei, and Torb. Specialists don't really deal too much DPS, and they also lack burst damage, but they help secure kills in other ways. Mei can separate the enemy team and make imbalanced fights in her team's favor. Sombra can hack enemies, which allows her team to easily kill them, and Torb can use his turret to ward off flankers and also to deal extra damage when the fights break out. Now these heroes also have other abilities, and the usage of those unique abilities will determine your success. As a specialist, the most important thing to remember is that you will not be able to do anything useful without a mastery of your abilities. You just don't have the damage. This is why specialists are the hardest to master, but once you get the hang of it, you can be a valuable asset to your team. You'll have to learn through experience. There's really no other way to truly understand who you need to be focusing and when to use your abilities to the maximum effect. So there it is, the 3 general trains of thought when it comes to playing DPS. You'll probably find that you prefer one class out of the 3. Depending on your learned behavior in Overwatch, one of these playstyles will probably make more sense to you. As a support and off-tank main, the traditional DPSs make the most sense to me. I stay with the team, I deal lots of damage, and I secure kills through consistent aim. Try to understand all of the classes so that you can swap when necessary, but it's definitely okay to focus on one. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more of me, feel free to follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Trevorius01 and Twitch at twitch.tv/Trevorius01. Alright, I will see you guys in my next video.